Monica, how are you?
Really good to see you again. I
Yeah,
can't wait to talk about what we're going to talk about.
I know. I'm really, really excited. So this week, really, the spotlight is going to be on some work that you've been doing over the last few months, but you can go into much more detail. But it's a story that you and I have been talking about, and it's one that I just think everybody should hear because the beginning, middle, and end of it is such a journey and so positive, but with potential negative outcomes if it hadn't been done with the softer approach, with the right way, with the right thought, with the right conversations um with their guardian, with their actual guardian. And you are the guardian of this whole 21 strong herd of horses and still have the ability to pick out necessities to meet needs of an individual. And I think that is such a superpower that you have. So, what I would like to
Thank
talk
you.
about today
Uh-huh.
is a photograph that you shared, and I shared it just a few hours ago, of two horses
Uh-huh.
in a grooming session, which we see pretty much daily and take very little notice of because, oh, that's nice, that's sweet. But I want you to share with me and with our members the history and the depth behind that moment. So,
Yes,
what can you
that was a
tell me?
very, very special one. Thank you, Rachel. That photograph depicts a gray gelding and a colored pony. And it's the gray gelding. His name is Napoleon that I'm going to talk about. Napoleon arrived as a livery last November, so almost a year ago. And he arrived with a guardian that needed him to have a stable because he couldn't be out in the sun and he couldn't be out in the flies. And he didn't like it when it rains. And he definitely couldn't be out with other horses because he had hurt a lot of horses. He was dangerous. It's impossible for him to live with other horses. When I hear myself saying that, my first thought is, how come I took her on? Because she was so not like, how come I took her on? But I did it. Well, if there's always a good reason for things, but this lady is a very good friend of another lady that was already here. And my gut feeling said that there was a chance that we could change life for this horse if she wasn't too set in her ways. So what makes that photograph so special is that a year later, he has, I'll give you more of the middle, but he has gone from, oh, I need a stable because if there are flies or if there's sun or if there's rain, he has to go into a stable, to the most chilled horse out there. He loves the
Wow.
rain. He loves the mud. He doesn't want to fly rug on. He definitely doesn't want to fly mask on. Couldn't care less about the flies. He just flickers them away. And then a few months later, I said, I think I'm going to put a horse in with Napoleon for you because they were hanging by the gate. You know, they were all
So
hanging
what?
by
Just
the
go
fence.
back a little bit. Go back a little bit. So
Yeah. Okay.
what got you to that point? To the fact that they were, because I remember meeting Napoleon and he was at that point. So this was in May, and he
Yeah.
was still on his own, not in a
No.
stable. Though, that had progressed, but certainly he was in a
Yeah.
round pen with
No interaction. Exactly. It
no
was, oh, that, and
interaction.
that's as recent as May, isn't it? Yeah, it feels like it's been like this forever now. So I do forget the timeline. So once Napoleon let his guardian know there's no point you renting a stable for me because I'm not going in, he just point blank refused to go in. He never did go in. She paid for the stable for a month because I just a little insert here. I don't have stabled horses, but I will rent out the stables for day use, as I call them, for hourly use. You know, because sometimes owners just love to bring their horses
You
in and
mean a
gawk at
bit like
them and
those
love
dodgy
them.
hotels?
Yes, yes, just come and have an hour with your horse. And groom them and gawk at them and give them special food and treats and then just go put them back out with their other friends while you're going to be gone. They don't need to be standing in a stable while you're not here. So that's my philosophy here. So she rented her day use stable, her motel, for her horse. and never used it. He went out and he never wanted to go into that stable. So that was a waste of her money for a month. Then it was going to rain and she was really, really nervous. So, and when she came the next day and he was full of mud. I mean, like those dogs that you see that get the muddiest puddle and they have mud everywhere. And she said, he looks so happy. I mean, a huge thing for this horse is that his uh, his guardian can read his facial expressions really well. You know,
That's
and
good.
she knows he's happy, he's not happy. It's really, really good. So she said, he's just so happy. He's so happy. So it just progressed like that. And as Natalie saw the progress and his relaxing and relaxing, of course she started to trust me a little bit more, you know, because I was this crazy woman saying that of course your horse can live with other horses. We just have to do it in the right way. And it came to a point where she said, please don't tell, because I said, I think we're ready. I think we're ready. He's hanging out with the others. There was no more this lunging at the others over the fence.
So
He
did
was
you move
relaxing. He was,
him? Sorry, did you move him then from the? Did you expand his area so he had more
he's,
line
he,
interaction?
I think he was in the round pen. I can't remember now what was happening, but he only lived in the round pen for a couple of weeks, and then he had a
Right,
middle paddock, that middle paddock to himself. So maybe
right.
when you came, there was either, I don't know if there was a sick horse or a newcomer, and I was pairing up somebody else. So that round pen was very temporary.
Okay, okay,
Yes,
got it.
I had a new livery arrive, and I was introducing other horses, and I was just beside myself that he was in this round pen. It was just horrible. I just couldn't. I said I can't stand seeing him in there anymore. Anyway, so I said, okay, I think I'm ready to introduce him to new horses, and she's kind of going, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. Hold on, I'm just going to turn something up in the background so it doesn't bother me. And and again, because she is very aware, you know, and as I've told her these things, she's taken them on board. She said, please don't tell me when you're going to do it because I'm afraid I might cause a problem because I get so nervous about it.
Ah,
Um, so yeah, so I just
was
studied
she
it
very
and
concerned about the welfare of the other horses? Because
of
if
the other
her
horses.
thought,
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
right.
She was really concerned that he might hurt another horse. So so I said, no, he'll be fine. He'll be fine. So I put him in with a couple of my horses. You know, I took the risk. Now, what first, her willingness, her trust in me, which I will be able forever grateful that she let me do this for him, and knowing how to read horses, knowing how to read that speech bubble that I talk about all the time. Because the way I did it was I put him in with the horses, but I took him out before he had the chance to get upset because there was another horse in his environment, feel that he had to protect himself. So I started changing the what happens next for him. So I'd stand in there, we wait for 5 minutes. As soon as I saw him kind of go, oh, I'm good. We're not doing that, and then we just go and I change. When I was telling you about it, you used a word that I love, something about emotional. When I said I just changed his chip in that moment, emotional something or other. I was managing his emotions, but can you remember what you called it at the time? Anyway, and so that's how it happened. And little by little, it was 5 minutes, it was 10 minutes, it was half an hour with me standing there. And then suddenly I realized I'd put him in and gone off to do waters and forgotten about him. And I went, oh my gosh, I forgot about him. And I came back and they were more fine and more fine and more fine and more fine
Fabulous.
until suddenly and then until suddenly it was overnight, and now we're it's two paddocks that I have here. One has four horses and one has two horses, and we're just about to take that fence down. So he will
Wow.
be living out in a bigger paddock, not huge, but big for our standards down here, with six other horses. And it's absolutely fantastic. And that's what makes that photograph so special. You know, for a while he said, it's okay, I'll share my space, but he was tolerating the other horses, you know,
Mm.
and there was three huddled not huddled, but hanging out together in the corner, and he was by himself in the paddock. He didn't interact with the others. I won't hurt you, I won't chase you, but leave me alone. You do your thing, I'll do mine. I'm
He was
humanizing him a
claiming
little bit,
his
but you know,
personal space.
yeah, he wasn't integrated. And then when I saw him getting closer and closer and closer, and then suddenly one day we looked up and they were grooming each other, and we all burst into
Wow.
tears.
Wow.
And so that,
I
I
mean,
mean, it's taken me years.
It's like
Mm.
when I looked at that picture and knowing the story, what came into my mind was that you rehorsed the horse. You allowed him to
Of course.
reconnect with his nature, with his being as a horse, and giving him that understanding that actually, the herd protects, it's a unit, and he doesn't have to be alone. Doesn't have to do it alone, and he can rely and lean on both the horses in that group, but also the humans within his space now, because they're not going to take that away from him, and they are going to meet his needs. So yeah, that
Mhm.
was unbelievable. Did you do anything specific with the space, preparing, when you did take him in the first time? Was there anything that or did you literally just walk through with the right energy?
And, so before I swapped them around. He was in one paddock and then he was in the other. So there's a lot of meeting the other horses through their poos. That's
Great.
very
No,
important.
that's what I
Yeah,
was getting at, because I
yeah,
know we've talked
yeah,
about that, and I wondered if
yeah.
that was part of his
Yeah, so
introduction as
what I
well.
did was I put it was a lot, and it goes back to how inconvenienced are you prepared to be. Yes, it was a lot of work taking these three horses out, tying them up somewhere so I can put this horse in this paddock, and then put these three horses in this paddock, and then let them smell each other's poos, yeah, and then swapping them around again, and so on. And then so that was the first. But the first step was there was a double fence, so there was never able to have a over the fence.
Mhm.
There were
Mhm.
ears, there were faces, but they couldn't touch each other because of the gap. That fence was taken down by the horses when they didn't need it anymore. They
Yeah.
just they destroyed it, and I just had to take it down. So that was the first step was this double fence. Second step was this mixing and matching, and November, December, January, February, March, April, May. So that was 6 months of just
Mm-mm-mm-mm.
waiting for the right moment. And then what I did was I took the horses in the new one I took in on the lead. I didn't just what you're trying to do is avoid that there is that explosion moment. So they don't even go there. They don't practice
Mhm.
that behavior. That behavior
Mhm.
does, from the moment it's a horse appeared in my space and then a horse disappeared from my space and it was fine. And now a horse appeared in my space and had a bit of hay over there. And now that horse disappeared from my space and nothing happened.
Mm-mm.
And slowly, slowly, a horse appeared in my space and didn't go anywhere. Now a
Mm-mm.
horse appeared in my space and there actually it's I mean, I'm just humanizing it, but it's like it's this pixelating that I talk about all the time. And it really was like 2 minutes, five
Mm-mm.
minutes, watching them, making sure I stopped it before it got before the emotions came. As soon as I saw him kind of wrinkling his eyes, I said, he's had enough. I didn't go, let him go, what they call over threshold. I just didn't let him go there. Just don't
Okay.
go there. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So one thing, I mean, I'm going to actually talk about that in a minute, but just want to go
Yeah.
back so that I can keep. Been writing some notes so that as we've been
Nice.
talking,
Nice. I
and
count. Yeah. Mhm,
one of the things that I find interesting is that he didn't want to go in the stable. Like, he made that really clear. And
mhm,
my feeling, when I know your space, so I know the energy of your space, and I know how it is perceived by your horses, and the gentleness of the whole area. And I wonder whether he felt so he understood the energy, even though he perhaps wasn't right or ready in that moment to be introduced, and that took time, which is absolutely right. But he just knew, no, I know I'm applying words. It could not be, it might
yeah.
not be, but it's like, it feels to me like, okay, I know that I don't want to go in there because that's not horse, but I'm not sure if I'm ready to go there because that's too much horse. So, but here I'm actually able to decompress. If I
Mhm,
by going by forcing him into the stable at that time with all the best intentions, because that's what he's used to. Let's do what he's used to. Gives that risk of actually not allowing the horse to decompress when they're coming out of a situation that we want to make them to meet their needs as a horse. So
mhm,
re-emphasizing, reinforcing the stable as his life even though for most people think about this as, okay, this is always what he's done. Let's continue that until he's ready. Well, he was obviously already ready because he felt the energy,
Ready.
he felt the space, and he felt saw and smelt, because we know that their sense of smell is so acute and that horses give off stress. That's why I call them happy poos when we do that thing
Mhm.
exchange. Make
Yeah,
sure they're
yeah.
happy poos and
The
not stress.
purrs, happy purrs. Absolutely. Yeah.
Um, he already knew that, so he was ready to decompress. So he didn't need that to go back. And I
Yeah.
think that is pretty amazing. So how was, before I get onto that last thing that you said, because that's quite a thing. How was his guardian throughout all of this when it all started to evolve?
Um, Incredibly emotional. It
Mm.
was a lot for her to deal with because she kept going back to guilt. And I said, please don't be,
Oh,
he was, and I said, please don't go there. He doesn't need you to do that. Just be happy for him now. You know,
absolutely.
I know you love him more than anything, and you were doing what you thought was best for him. He lived tethered for a while because he
Wow.
was out by because of his geography. There was nowhere safe to turn him out, but then she wanted to get him out of the stable. So she has had him since he was 4 and he's now 17. And he had never been turned out with other horses other than one day when he hurt somebody and then another day when he hurt another horse. And then that was it.
Wow. I didn't realize it was so long. That, I mean, that makes the
He
whole
was sad.
story
Yeah.
even more. I'm not surprised she's
Yeah.
emotional. I'm not surprised she's
Yeah,
emotional.
very, yeah, yeah. So, when I send her photographs like that one, look what Napoleon's doing. She just cries. It's so, yeah, she's very, very happy and
Mm.
grateful. And she says, I'm so happy that he can be a horse now. She's actually said that.
Yeah,
Now he
there you
gets
go.
to be a horse.
Yeah, I
She
hope
has
that
said that.
she has accepted that, in the sense that, um, now is the time to celebrate, not thinking about what has
That's
got you to
exactly
this
what it's
point, and
saying.
just
Yeah.
feel, look what you're doing now. Look where he is now. Look what he
Yeah.
is, and these are the days
Yeah.
he's going to really
Yeah.
lean into. So that's
Yeah.
amazing. So what I want to talk about, which is what you said, is when you introduced them, you took him in on the lead and
Mhm.
you removed him when you felt he was
That's
hitting threshold, like,
I removed the visitor. So he was in his space and I brought somebody into his space.
okay, okay, better,
Mhm.
better. Okay, good.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
he
yeah,
he was
yeah.
in a familiar space that
Space,
he
yeah,
felt at
yeah,
home in,
yeah,
and you
yeah.
brought the visitor in. Okay, I thought it was the other way around. Okay, but either
Okay.
way, so the visitor. So you were watching him free.
Yes, he was
And
free.
so when you felt that he was beginning to get overwhelmed by the visitor, you removed the visitor.
Mm, yeah,
And that's
yeah.
okay. I'd got it in my head. It was the other way around.
No,
Um,
no.
okay, so it still sort of applies, but not
Okay,
as much, because he was in a familiar space. Because we often talk about completing the conversation. And I know that when we
okay.
introduce horses, it's a different scenario completely, because obviously you know his history and you know where he's come from. Um, they often say that if you don't leave a conversation to complete, they go back to zero. But what I was
Hmm.
going to say is what you were doing was not allowing the conversation to begin with any depth, which is a
Exactly.
good thing. So one
Yeah.
thing is, if you allow the conversation to become deep and connected, even though it is a bit can be a bit when you introduce horses, even if you're doing it, without that horse, but with two horses, say, that and you have a good history with, or has had a good horse history, there is inevitably going to be a conversation, verbal conversation. There's going to be noise. There's going to be a
Yeah.
little defensiveness. There's going to be a little posturing, and all of that. And once that is settled, they very rarely go back to that with any deepness. They do have, I mean, my guys have been together for years and they still have their odd squeal, which is what they do, particularly stallions. But what you did, you can correct me if I'm mistaken, but from what I hear, from what you said, it's almost like you said, look, this could be a conversation when you're
Oh, yeah.
ready. And then you're removing before the conversation was either overwhelming or became anything that was going to create. harm, even
Mhm.
not just for the visitor, but also, or that horse, but also for yourself. Because
Mhm.
when you're introducing horses on a line, I think we have to be really clear about our own safety in that moment, right?
Yeah, I hardly ever do it on the line.
Mm,
Usually by the time I put them in, I feel they're ready to go into their conversations and figure it out
right.
without there
Okay.
being too, yeah. But I knew that this horse I didn't want him practicing the conversation. Get the out of here, because that was the conversation he's had so many times, or a couple of
Absolutely.
times. That's the one he knows. So I had to show him and and I also had to protect the other horse a little
Well,
bit.
no,
I said,
absolutely.
and it's the pick. It's the, like with everything. Um, I don't want to use behavioral words because they're all big and jargon, and that's my thing, not to do jargony things. But it was almost like create the awareness, but then take it away before you have to do anything about it. So you see, nothing happens. Like,
Mm,
here's the horse, nothing happens. Let's go. Or here's the saddle, I'm not going to put it on. And here's the saddle again, and I'm not going to put it on. And here's the saddle again, and I'm not going to put it on. So I did that. And then here's the
but
horse,
with
and
the
we're going to
horse.
hang out. Here's the horse, I'm going to take the head collar off. Here's the horse, and so just one step at a time, one
I
pixel
think
at a
that's
time.
brilliant. I think as well, what this shows is that not all things fit every situation. And
Mhm, mhm,
when we know the history, when we have the context, which we talk about a lot, having the context, it's important to be flexible and to be able to
mhm,
adapt the horse that you have in front of you, in this case,
mhm.
Napoleon,
Yeah.
because it's so
Yeah.
important to do that.
And when you say this, I didn't think of it like the beautiful way you think of the conversation in the beginning at the end. I wasn't thinking of it like that. I was thinking more the pixelation thing, more practical. But when you say about the conversation, it takes me to the day a conversation changed Fabuloso's life. And if I know it's not the photograph, but it would fit really well in here. When Fabuloso came to me, he had been a stallion for a long time. He was a late gelding. And I was a bit like, okay, I'll put him in with mares and he'll be fine. He'll be fine. And so he was in with a couple of mares, and he wasn't fine. The separation, the protection, it was really an emotional time, and it was a big mistake, but I learned from it. So eventually I didn't separate them, but I just slowed down. I learned a lot about integrating horses and geldings that think they're still stallions or whatever it was. And then when I closed down my yard and I was going to have to be a livery somewhere, I didn't know what to do with Fabuloso because I couldn't find a geldings only field for him. And I was just like, I'm going to have to put him in a paddock by himself. I'd rather not have a horse. I'd rather send him away somewhere. I mean, it was just so against everything I believe in, as you know. And I can't remember what led to me making the decision. One day I was pretty desperate. It was the weekend before we were leaving the yard and moving as a livery somewhere else. And a lot of things changed. Something where I was going to go wouldn't have us anymore for another reason. I said, oh, I just have to put him in here for a moment. I put him in with the mare and the gelding that were going to come to the new yard together. And Fabuloso went up to Zumi. One of the horses are here. Zumi, the big red one,
Mhm.
really posturing like, you stay away from my girls. And I kind of went, I just didn't look. And I did look, actually. And Zoomy, he is such a laid back horse. He's Zoomy that doesn't zoom. It was almost like I heard him say, who the do you think you are? Double barreled him twice, turned around and latched onto his wither. Now get out of here. This is my hay, okay? And Fabuloso just went, he shook like this and went, what was that? And now he lives with mares and geldings. And it was
Yeah.
almost like they had that conversation. He was put
Mhm.
right into his place by somebody by a horse, by another horse, not me trying to take him by the lead rein
No,
and
no,
little by
no.
little, because that wasn't going to do it. And it was more, I have to admit, it was more by circumstance than by choice. But I learned that sometimes you just have to let them figure it out.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it's scary though. It's scary though,
It
because we
is
don't want to
scary,
let those.
no, absolutely. And I have to say, there's certain sounds that I can't, that really trigger me or make me wince. And one of them is the squeal.
Mm, mm,
It just, and I don't know if you've ever been around a breeding, but when horses are breeding naturally in the paddock, there's a lot of squealing,
mm.
usually
Yeah.
by the mare. Um, but yeah,
So,
it is a sound that
so,
really worries.
that was just going back to the having the full conversation. I let
Mm-mm.
Sumi. I didn't let it. It just happened. There was I had no say in it. It was going to happen. Zumi had the conversation with Fabuloso, and it really it never happened again. He's been with mares and geldings, and it's never.
Brilliant.
Yeah, he'll go and he'll posture and he'll show off, but nothing. No big deal. No big deal.
So that
But going.
photograph,
Mhm.
sorry, I was going to say that
Yeah, no,
photograph of Napoleon, in Napoleon, right? And
at,
the
at,
little
at
the
some point,
pinto.
yeah.
That's recent, isn't it? That
Yes,
is
yeah, just about 2 weeks ago,
wow,
something like that.
fabulous.
And I have one of him grooming the dark horse, and I have him grooming the other horse. So it's not just the pony
Even
anymore.
better, even better.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
truly integrated.
Yeah. So now I'd like to make the space bigger, which means it's instead of a group of four and a group of two, I'd like to let them be a group of six, so they have more space. And I have had the six in the smaller space, but you can feel it. It was a little bit like, oh, this is all too
Bit
tight for us.
tight.
So
Yeah, yeah.
there was a bit tight. So I separated them again. But there was a little bit of Napoleon saying, no, these are my four friends, and you go over there. So I have to readdress it. But
Okay.
it is a lovely story, and like that, I have so many. I
Mm.
do love integrating horses that, and I suppose this is what I would love this conversation to put out there. No horse needs to live by itself. No horse, it's not possible, or they can't live, or just find out what's missing for them. What
Mm.
they if they're only protecting, what are they protecting? What resource out there do they feel there isn't enough of? You might think there is enough hay, but maybe the horse doesn't feel there's enough hay,
Exactly.
or enough shade, or enough scratching posts, or enough horses, or enough square meters. Whatever it is, you need to
Mhm.
figure out what's wrong. um
I think
yeah,
one of the things
Napoleon.
that,
Yeah.
sorry, carry on. No, no, carry on.
No, 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 go ahead.
I was going to
No, I
say,
was going to say,
one of the
you
things,
know,
one of the
go,
things
your turn.
one of the things that I get when that conversation comes up, when I've come across horses on their own and we start that conversation, and I try not to blame or shame, because sometimes it is lack of knowledge, experience. Um, but it is frustrating because they say, well, you don't know because you don't know my horse. Well, no, but if you give me the context, I bet either I have been through it or I know somebody who has been through it, that, like in this case with you and Napoleon, the next time I have that conversation and they say, well, yes, but you don't know my horse. He's aggressive and I'm frightened he's going to hurt another horse. The first thing I'm going to do, okay, well then speak to Monica because Monica has been through it. We
Uh,
have lived through this, and I agree with you. No horse needs to
mm,
be on their own at
no.
all.
Sometimes we don't have enough space to put him with others, but then that's because you don't have enough space, not because your horse can't live with other horses.
Exactly. Oh, I love that. Absolutely. And to that
Well,
end, find more space or get a
yeah,
cat.
okay, exactly. No, honestly, just choose where you're going to keep your horse. They just have yeah, two horses. You just have to find enough space.
Yeah,
And enough space is not because some book says 1,000 square meters per horse. For some horses, 200 square meters is enough. And for some horses, 4,000 square meters isn't enough, but that's why they need more space. They need to get,
exactly.
there's some people that I let very close to me and some people that I cross the road if I see, but that doesn't mean I have to live with, and then that does happen. I'm sure it happens, and I yeah, but this is about living by themselves. Not all horses will get on with all horses. That also happens.
Absolutely.
That
Absolutely.
also happens. Yeah, yeah.
But okay, but I would say
Yeah.
that they learn to, well, they understand this by nature. They're not learning anything. They understand by nature that they need another horse to stay safe, to feel that
Uh-huh.
safety. And I'll tell you, my girls, when they're just the two of them, so sometimes I will add, I mix them out, put Charlie in there being a gelding, or the last time Champ was up there breeding or whatever. But if they're on their own, they are not the best of friends. And sometimes it aggravates me I feel bad. I get that guilt feeling that your guardian gets because I think, oh, I just wish they were.
Yeah.
They will groom each other because they know they need that from each other. They protect each other, which is the most amazing thing. So if there's a noise or if the hunters are coming too close, they are protecting each other. They sleep with one protecting each other. But
Mm-hmm.
fundamentally, they are acquaintances more than best friends. So
Mm-hmm.
they will
Mm-hmm.
push each other around a little bit, or there was, I mean, one of them, Promise, is very, she's a watcher, so she likes to stand and watch, and their land is much higher than anything else. So she gets the opportunity to fulfill that need of watching over the land because she can see all the way
Mm-hmm.
down to the valley.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Particularly when we close the forest off, depending on hunting day and stuff like that, because she likes to be up in the forest. But really, they are not they're not best friends, and it does make me sad a little bit, but they know that they need each other to protect each other, to feel safe, to understand that's what they need, and so they will rely on each other. They just will squabble a bit.
Yeah. Yeah. It's beautiful. And sometimes we have to inconvenience ourselves to make it
Totally,
work.
totally,
Yeah, sometimes it
totally.
isn't easy and it is time consuming and it's moving horses around and you know, it is hard work sometimes, but if we were prepared to go that extra mile or two for them, then they can live in a group and they're definitely happier for it. They're
So what
definitely
would
happier
be
for it.
your concluding thought, statement, feeling, revelation about this experience that you had?
With Napoleon. Um, that's a really good question. That every horse has the right to be a horse,
Wow.
and we just have to set up the circumstances so that we just have to set up the circumstances so they get to be a horse.
Brilliant. I
Yeah,
love that.
he hadn't had the chance to be a horse, and that's what his guardian says. So that's what we learned, and he's lucky
Brilliant.
that he has her in his life,
Absolutely.
and that she had
Absolutely.
that open mindedness. Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
If you ever watch this, Natalie, please don't feel guilty anymore. You know, you did what you thought was best at the time. You did the best with what you had available to yourself at the time. You have loved this horse through so many circumstances and up and down in your life. And then you brought him here, and now he's absolutely fine. You didn't give up on him, and you were open minded. That's all you could do. Yeah.
Exactly. What do we
So
say?
yes, my call is yeah, yeah. Hmm?
I mean, I think it just shows so much heart, and I think, yeah, she should accept that praise and pat on the back for doing what she did. So
Yeah, that is more that is growing and that is being brave. It's so sometimes the most difficult thing is accept that what we've been doing is wrong.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Change is exactly,
a
exactly.
paradigm shift is like, and it's like my whole. I used to say this. It's like when I went to that first weekend when I thought, when I got a glimpse to this new room. I just felt that the scaffolding of my life had fallen from me. That's why I cried
Mhm.
for 3 days. So I sobbed. It was like, but what about the straight shoulders, hip, ankles, and elbows to my bit kind of thing? What about my 20-meter circles I've been perfecting for the past 20 years? Changing your mind, it is huge. Paradigm shifts are
Yeah,
huge, and I commend people that can embrace them.
perfect. Well,
Yes.
thank you for sharing. I think that's a wonderful lesson for us all to take on board. I've loved
Mhm.
listening to it and reliving it and seeing the
Thank
outcome
you.
of it. And yeah, brilliant. Well done,
Yeah.
you.
And I love your take on it as well, and your nature thing on it as well. So thank you so much.
Okay.
See you at the next one. Bye.
Bye.